All right, what are the odds Luke and Jimmy will do another podcast involving recruiting from this past weekend? About the same odds as a bear coming out of the ocean in Destin.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, the reason I use that terrible joke to begin with is because apparently there was a bear that came out of the ocean in Destin. I don't know if it's real. With AI these days, I have no idea what's real anymore. I don't know if you're actually there, but I know that it looked like a bear coming out of the ocean and in Destin. And that was very
small bear. It was a small bear. I was just wondering how he got in. I mean, why is there a video of him coming out? Surely there's a video of him going in.
There's a much better video of him going in, I'm sure. There's got to be a story about a seafaring circus or something.
I've actually heard anecdotal stories of friends, because we spend quite a bit of time in Destin and Fort Walton, and we've talked to people. I've heard stories of bears crossing traffic, and by that I mean 98. I mean the highway with a billion cars on it, that very rarely a bear will get out on that road. So I'm not shocked that one has made it all the way to the ocean. I just want to know where he swam from. Is it a Cuban Bear? Is it a world record marathon Cuban swim? I mean, that's a pretty good ways. I'm no geography guy, but
he was smoking a cigar. Look, here's the thing. I know people can barely stand us talking about this, so let's get to recruiting news in a furry.
Good one.
Tell us about this past weekend, Jimmy. Some more information has rolled in since last time we did a podcast was Sunday morning. And since then, some of your cohorts at On 3 have been able to talk to some of the guys that were visiting this past weekend.
Yeah. Outstanding work at BOL by the great Joseph Hastings and Andrew Bone. Already talked to most of the kids that have come home, and look what BOL. Here's the headliner for me, because I couldn't be more excited about this guy. And we mentioned him on the last show, the offensive lineman from IMG Academy, Jordan Seaton. He's one of the top 100 prospects in the country. He's one of the very best offensive linemen, period. He's a guy, I'm not saying he's the equal to, but he's in the ballpark of J.C. Latham and Tyler Booker in terms of how good this kid is. And, we think at BOL that Alabama now leads. Now, does that mean that you can go ahead and write him down and it's a done deal? That doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that he really liked his visit. He really likes Alabama. He's strongly considering Alabama, and there doesn't appear to be a favorite other than Alabama right now. Now, he's going to go on other visits, and he could come back on a visit high from there too. But I think my takeaway personally, in terms of why I'm excited about this, I think we're a leader for Jordan Seaton, and it's now very realistic that Seaton could end up on our commitment list. And that's not somebody that I've looked to so far in this class as someone likely to end up in it. I think this is big, huge, very good news. Now, Daniel Calhoun, another offensive lineman, again, he estimates he's visited Tuscaloosa 12 times. This was his official visit. It went really well. He's going to continue to go on other visits. The real threat here is Georgia, but it's very realistic we could end up with the Daniel Calhoun, who's outstanding. To me, those were the big takeaways from this weekend, even though there were other kids that visited, like DeMello Jones. He's a really good defensive back prospect. Don't know that that's going to work out. Arian Hampton, loved his visit. Now, I've been saying Texas, and I'm still saying Texas, but the funny thing is, I'm saying Texas, the kid's saying Alabama. Now, again, a visit high. It happens all the time. I mean, y'all have all gone on vacations and trips and it's been great. How many times have you gone on vacation and come back and said, love it, can't wait to go there again, but then it comes time for a vacation, you pick somewhere else because, I've already been there. I'm just saying that's a vacation high, right? I'm never going anywhere else. I'm going to St. Augustine every time. So it's a visit high with Arian Hampton. I still think it'll be Texas, but don't count out Alabama. at all. Amari Jefferson, wide receiver from Chattanooga, has always liked Alabama. He likes Alabama. He likes Georgia. He likes Texas. I'm telling you, for a kid that was committed to Tennessee to play baseball, he is one highly recruited wide receiver. Everybody seems to like this guy. So the visits went really, really well over the weekend. Isaiah Fega was also there, Central Phoenix City. Interestingly, I thought all week he would camp. He did not. But don't get carried away with you got to camp to go to Alabama. Not in his case. Some kids are takeable per Saban staff, period. We did have coaches that saw him play this spring. To us, we just have one question about him, or I'm sure the one question. It isn't about can you play. We've seen the tape. We know that. We've had assistants that seen him at his own spring practice. With Fega, it's about how big are you? He apparently measured in at 6'2", 285. So the questions about his size are over. This is a guy Alabama would really like to have, and I do think there's a good chance there. He's also going to visit Texas. And again, I know there's some Alabama fans, because I read y'all's comments on BOL and otherwise, that aren't as knocked out by this guy. Look, I mean, he's committed to Utah, which is a top 15, top 20 program, and he's about to take an official visit to Texas, whose offer list and whose visit list looks a lot like Alabama and Georgia's. So, look, Texas thinks he's a player. Utah thinks he's a player. It's crazy for Alabama fans not to think so. I love him myself. Again, he was there this weekend, loved it. His family was there, loved it. Overall, a great weekend. But boy, Luke, next weekend is the mammer jammer of official visit weekends. It's star-studded. I'm not going to be surprised if Friday evening, Luke, there's not a red carpet with, I don't know who does it anymore, Ross, what's his name, or Gigi from I'm just saying E! News is likely to be there. Ryan Seacrest. Or Laverne.
What you were trying to say.
I'm trying to think of who are the red carpet people on E! They change them out constantly. I think last year it was Laverne Cox a lot. So Laverne Cox, Ryan Seacrest, they're going to be there rolling out the red carpet, interviewing these guys when they come in and they're Texas. I'm telling you, it's a star-studded official visit weekend coming up. DeMarcus Riddick, and we'll go over the whole list all week. Stay tuned for the shows late in the week, where we'll go over the whole visit list, and it's a who's who of who's really good.
You know, that would be something, right? That'd be very Saban-esque if he actually did have Ryan Seacrest show up with a red carpet. That would be kind of cool.
He's an Atlanta guy, so he does come. I mean, he's from Atlanta, so I worry that we'll come up with this great idea and Georgia will just steal it like they do so many of our other good ideas, because Seacrest is an Atlanta guy. So, but that's interesting.
Jimmy, let's go ahead and tell everybody about FanDuel, because you know we love us some FanDuel. We always have, we always will. FanDuel, the NBA playoffs, they might be over by the time you watch this. I don't know if Denver won or not, but I would put my money on Denver, which tells me you should probably have bet on the Heat. But right now, new customers get that no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet don't win. That's pretty good. There's no better place to bet all the action, whether it's NBA, MLB, NFL, college baseball, whatever, than America's #1 sports book. The only sports book not endorsed by Brad Bohannon. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And Jimmy, tomorrow we're going to continue on with Countdown. Hopefully have some other recruiting news. Hopefully have some Grant Nelson news. We're waiting on that. I know everybody feels relatively positive about it.
Maybe Monday night. And I'm not saying it's Monday night. I'm just saying all I can do is just repeat the tea leaf. Might be Monday evening, and we hear from Grant Nelson. But I'm certain it's coming up. Okay. Feeling good about it too, by the way. Feeling good. But I feel good. What did I say? 60% in the last show. I'm not changing that, but I think it's between Alabama and Arkansas, and I like Alabama's chances a little more.
All right, let's talk top 5 Saban era QBs. There was a good article about that, and it just got me to thinking, because I just knew that the writer was going to have Tua Tagovailoa number one. A lot of people may have Tua number one. I still think Bryce Young's the best player in Alabama history. Maybe it's recency bias. I know people keep telling me that. I keep saying, y'all wait till he gets to the NFL and watch what he does with maybe a bit of a more competent offensive coordinator. Not to say that he was dealing with total incompetence or anything, but just saying I don't think he was always put in the best position. And then, of course, he also had to deal with wide receiver injuries and ineptitude at times from that position. But, the top five, I think, are pretty easy. It's about the order. Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, AJ, Tua, and Bryce. I think everybody would agree on that. I think people would argue, say, okay, you're either going to have Tua or Bryce number one. I think that's pretty clear. Personally, I put AJ at 5. Again, maybe it's recency bias. I don't know. I just remember always believing, okay, AJ is good enough to where we don't have to hope he doesn't beat us, but I never considered him to be, despite all the records, never considered him. I guess in retrospect, I don't consider him on Tua or Bryce or Mac Jones level. And frankly, I think Jalen Hurts is probably even better. Now, passing in college, I would probably give the edge to AJ, but just overall everything else, I'd probably give it to Jalen Hurts. So my 5 would be AJ at 5. I'd put Jalen Hurts at 4, even though he's kicking butt in the NFL. I'd put Mac Jones at 3, and then I put Tua, and then I put Bryce. That's my 5. I know some people have argument with that, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, leave it to the lawyer to ask more questions than give a solid opinion. But to me, it's just two ways to look at it. Are we talking about the most gifted, the most talented quarterback, or are we talking about the most accomplished while he's at Alabama? And I think it's two different lists, because you kind of have to ask that in relation to the hardest guy to rank of the bunch, and that's AJ. I would put AJ 5th easily if we're talking about the most gifted guys. To me, AJ would be 5th. I would put Bryce 1, Tua 2, Mac 3, Jalen 4, AJ 5, or I might flip-flop Jalen and Mac, actually, if we're talking about who's gifted. Bryce 1, Tua 2. Let's go Jalen 3, Mac 4, AJ 5 in terms of the most gifted. Now, accomplishment at Alabama, let me tell you, it's hard not to rank AJ at the top. I mean, no one has 2 national championships. We were in it for a third with him as the starter, to say nothing of the one that we won while he was redshirting. So he walked out here with 3 national championship rings, was in the running for a 4th, set a lot of school records, performed well in big games, and was a 5th-round draft pick, which at the time was a big deal, because he was sort of the first in a long time to be drafted at all, or certainly to be drafted as high as the 5th. It's just since AJ that the bar has been raised. But so to me, it just depends on, are we talking overall talent, or are we talking about accomplishment at Alabama? I'm sort of blending them.
Yeah.
And what blending them, I'm going a lot like Luke. Bryce 1, Tua 2, Mac 3, AJ 4, Jalen 5. And to me, it's an incredible list. I mean, who coaching in college football right now, their 5th best quarterback is Jalen Hurts or AJ McCarron? Yeah. No one. I mean, we've had an incredible run of quarterbacks at Alabama, no doubt. And for all the struggles going on right now, or all the perceived struggles, a little bit, just, hey, what goes up must come down. We've had 5 incredible ones in a row.
Couple of interesting things here. I was thinking at first, AJ didn't have to deal with the playoffs. Well, if AJ did have the playoffs, he probably would have had 3 in a row, because that 2013 kick 6 thing, Alabama gets another shot. They probably win the playoff. And I don't think anybody was going to beat 2011 or 2012. So, now you could, and at first I was going to say maybe AJ didn't have as good a receivers. I don't know. He had Amari Cooper. If Bryce Young had Amari Cooper, my God. So I don't know if playoffs are good or bad. I mean, because I think that it would have it certainly helped some of the other guys, but I think it would have helped AJ too, because I think those teams probably would have won some. And here's another thing that I thought about: what if Blake Sims defeats? What if Alabama doesn't just lay an egg up 21-6? I think it was against Ohio State, and Ohio State comes back and win in 2014. What if Blake Sims leads them to victory and Alabama goes on to defeat Oregon for a national championship? Do we consider putting Blake Sims on this list? And before you say I'm crazy, holy cow, did y'all see the Texas A&M and Florida games he played? He was amazing. And the LSU comeback, crazy. The Auburn game. Now, a lot of people remember that game as the Amari Cooper game, rightfully so. He torched Auburn. But those passes didn't come out of thin air. I mean, Blake Sims was throwing them. So it does make me wonder if Blake Sims would have at least been given some consideration to be on the list. If not, but it's kind of funny. Greg McElroy won a national championship. I wouldn't even put him in the discussion. Jake Coker won a national championship. I wouldn't put him in the discussion. If Blake Sims had just even been able to beat Ohio State, I think he'd be in the discussion.
Yeah, I actually, in this thread on BOL, and I hope everybody that listens is a member at BOL, and you can go read it. But over at BOL, in this thread, I ranked all the Saban quarterbacks from 1 all the way down to every starting quarterback under Nick Saban. Of course, had a lot of the top 5 we just went over with Luke was my top 5. Obviously, I ranked them all the way down to John Parker Wilson, who's the first Nick Saban quarterback. Blake is the best story, one of the best stories of the whole Saban dynasty. What I'll always remember about Blake, not necessarily those crazy good performances and the fact he was like SEC Player of the Year, and that his improvement from April to August in 1 year, what's that, 4 months? I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot. I've been around the block, I've never seen a player improve in 4 months like he did, which is just flat out nothing but hard work and quality coaching from his private QB coach. Fantastic work. Blake went from, I'll just be honest, he went from awful to fantastic in 4 months. And what a great story, and what a great guy. And I'll forever love the Blake Sims stories. Now, I can't rank him in the top 5. And there were some people in the thread wanting Blake to be higher, I can tell you, and wanting Blake to be up there. But one thing about that I would say is it is kind of an amalgam of what you accomplished and how good you were. And as good as Blake was, undrafted, never a real shot at the NFL, hadn't been really good in these other pro leagues either, whether you're talking about CFL, XFL, USFL, he tried them all. I think to some extent he was always going to be limited in terms of next level stuff. But at Alabama, in his final year, he was simply a machine. Love Blake. Will always love Big Six.
Would have been interesting if Blake Sims could have gotten a COVID year and had one more year under Lane Kiffin, or maybe even a Sark or something like that. That could have been interesting. All right, Jimmy, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Antonio Kite on your countdown. And we're back. Antonio Kite from Anniston, Alabama. Alabama also got another dude from Anniston this past year. So what tell us about Antonio Kite. This is a guy that's an incredible athlete, and, waiting for him to burst on the scene.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see a lot of him this fall. I don't think so, but 2 or 3 things. One of Antonio's up here. We're like at 54 in the countdown, so we're about the halfway point of the roster. We're getting to discussion of who's the best player on the team that's not playing. Antonio's in that discussion along with Jeremiah Alexander, who we talked about last time, in terms of who are the best player on the team that we're not going to see most Saturdays, except maybe in end of game situations. That's Antonio Kite. A couple of things to know about him. Number one, we sort of recruited him to be a safety, and he showed up and he played safety, and he was good. In fact, so good, they moved him to what is honestly a more difficult position to play, or a position that requires an even higher degree of athleticism at cornerback. That's why we should be really high on Antonio Kite. We thought, we looked at him, we're like, hey, he's a safety. And then he gets here, we're like, whoa, he's a corner, and he's been a corner ever since. So that's one reason to be super high on him. To the size, 6'1", 182, I think on the right, 6'1", 189 on the official roster. That's NFL premium size for a cornerback. And he's just a redshirt freshman. Alabama, he's probably going to add another 6 or 8 pounds of muscle in his time in Tuscaloosa. But here's the thing: when I first came up with the ranking, and I worked really hard on it for a couple of days, come up with the ranking. Antonio was a little higher because I really thought he might be the third corner based on how he did this spring behind Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold. I thought Antonio slotted in as the third corner, which is someone that might play. He's one turned ankle away from being a starter. That's how good he is. So I had him on my initial rankings up in the low 40s, about 10 spots higher than he is right now. The reason I bumped him down was just simply because Alabama signed Trey Amos from University of Louisiana in the transfer portal. And I'm assuming, so this could be wrong, but I'm assuming that due to Amos's age and experience, he slots in ahead of Kite, knocking Kite down to the fourth corner, maybe the fifth guy, depending on how you view Earl Little. And that means Kite's unlikely to play other than end-of-game situations. So Kite is a guy to watch in the future. As of today, I'm confident in saying he's a future starter at Alabama. Real good athlete, an even better than expected athlete with great NFL prototypical size for the position. So he's one to watch. He's a 54 on the list though, because I don't know how significant he'll be this fall. And this ranking is about the team this fall, not the team in the future.
Yeah, and you keep talking about this. I think it's a great way to put it. These are the best players on the team that really aren't starters. And I think that's and really you're talking about, we just talked about Jeremiah Alexander yesterday, talking about Antonio Kite today. I think if you flip-flop them, nobody would have a problem with it at all. And in fact, I could probably make the argument to do that, but and even put, maybe Alexander a few slots higher or Kite a few slots higher if you believe in them. But you're right. We got to see what they have to offer.
Yeah, and I would have no problem with Alexander ahead. I'm sure I considered or even had it there at one point, because when you're talking about ranking 1 through 89, whether you're 54 or 53, it is sort of a coin flip. I believe, in my recollection, I had Coat a little high. I mean, I had Kite a little higher because I thought he was a third corner leaving spring, and then we're bringing Amos. I knocks him down to fourth. I'm not sure Alexander's the fourth outside linebacker. I think first is Dallas and second's Braswell, third's Q Rob, right? So Alexander would be fourth or fifth with Keanu Coat, who we might discuss as soon as tomorrow.
In fact, I was going to say, spoiler alert, that's why you have the Freudian slip there. Coat and Kite coming right up.
Well, it's because we're talking about guys in that area, right? I mean, it's because these guys are all bunched up. It's very hard to distinguish them because they're some of the best players on the team that we're probably not going to see play a lot. Doesn't mean they're not really good, because these guys are.
And unless you've been living in a cave like a bear that gets in the ocean, you know all about Jimmy Stein's roster countdown that we will be continuing to discuss. As the week rolls on, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Until then, everybody, appreciate you watching. Please subscribe and roll tide.
Roll tide.